Thank you.
Ramona?
So Alex, I think it's good to say that we did get to about 50%, 40 to 50% of that plan, correct? Up to 40%?
Yeah, segment 3 was a baby segment. We were not able to
No,
accomplish
but
the
from
full.
the three segments, we have about 50% of our buildings that were in the FMP from 2002, correct?
So we currently stand at 46 of 112.
3%.
Pretty close.
That's pretty close.
Pretty
Come on,
close.
Alex.
I'll give you that one. That's close.
So at that time, 46% of our target buildings were completed. Keeping in mind that since '02, we've closed a number of buildings. So in order to build, sometimes you have to close to combine student populations. So and the segmenting happened, and we didn't keep going because we ran out of money, right? Because as everyone has said, we need to raise some of the money in order to continue to build and demolish and things like that. So that's one of the reasons that we had a whole FMP and things have changed, different people, different communities, so you have to go back and do all this all over again.
Fair.
Alex, can you remind us the last FMP new build that we built?
Yep, our newest facility master plan building is Columbus Afrocentric, which I believe opened in 2007. It's either 2017 or 18, forgive me for the, so it's been roughly 10 years since we launched design of a new facility here.
And do we have any that are currently in any part of progress, like to be projected to be built, that are still part of that?
We have no current facilities projected to be designed or built. So Treasurer Cook is certainly showing you the options. But since you asked the question, so keep in mind that with our current permanent improvement levy, we do have other investments underway, like the our renovation of Devonshire Elementary School that's planned for this summer.
Perfect, thank you.
Which again is a new thing our community gave us, the PI levy. We didn't have that before, so now we have dedicated funding in order to make those upgrades.
Correct. So as we talk about that dedicated funding, option 2, tax anticipation note, because we have that revenue stream coming in from our permanent improvement levy, we have the ability to issue a note anticipating receipt of the taxes. The community supported that. So with respect to the TAN, as we call it, a PRO, it's short-term debt. We can't exceed more than 10 years. We use a smaller percentage or portion of the permanent improvement levy. Depending on the size of the project, it could allow for additional projects to be funded because, again, smaller period of time, smaller percentage, we can do perhaps more. We could still use OFCC co-funding with this option. A con, we spoke about maintaining buildings and facilities with the permanent improvement funds. Obviously, we would still use a portion of our permanent improvement funds, which could impact future projects. Again, this cannot exceed 10 years. It's more limiting than other options on the amount and maximized via debt. So again, it's just a 10-year period. Pro to that, again, you pay it off, but the payment's a little bit higher as you navigate through that. Got your question, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to keep it.
That's okay, no, you're fine.
If the board decides to do any of these that require funding, like taking on debt, what effect does that, like, so you said 10, can't exceed 10 years. We're already looking at a deficit in the budget in 5 years.
Correct.
So, and I assume that's not counting this since this hasn't been decided on, right?
Correct.
So that adds to the deficit?
The good news is it won't, because we're going to use a different stream of
Okay.
revenue for that. This is going to come out of our permanent improvement funds. The 5-year forecast is specific to the general fund.
Okay.
So we would not compound that problem,
Okay.
thankfully. Option 3, a COP, a certificate of participation. I like to think of these similar to leases. I've done several of these over the years. Pro debt can be issued for up to 30 years, similar to a home mortgage, if you will. So again, it gives you the ability to lower those annual debt service payments or semi-annual, spread it out. We can borrow more money. will use a smaller portion of PI. It has the potential, again, for other projects to be funded depending on the desires of the Board of Education. And we can still use OFCC, so we still pick up that split, if you will. A con, we're still using a portion of our permanent improvement funds, again, because we have projects that are ongoing. It will encumber a portion of it for up to 30 years. We just spoke of the TAN, that the benefit is it's tied up or encumbered for 10 years. We've just tied it up for longer. So we're just, much like a home mortgage, we're buying that payment for up to 30 years with respect to this. Option 4, and again, as we get closer to these discussions, we'll certainly dive in more. I'll have much more detailed analysis of the numbers. Option 4, we've had a lot of discussion around a new concept, a P3, private-public partnerships. It's the 4th option in our toolkit. From a pro standpoint, additional community buy-in by extending opportunities for co-use. You can think affordable housing, you can think medical facilities, et cetera, small retail, mixed use. So this is a concept that's been embraced in the development community. It's an option that some public entities are beginning to explore. So it's certainly on the table. A potential to share the development expenses. This is a big benefit for us as a district because it reduces the cost overall, creates some exciting opportunities, and lowers the burden on our community. I think it's fair to say it's an innovative approach to school construction. I'm not aware of anyone in the state of Ohio that has done this yet. I'll reserve the right to be corrected on that, but it's not been a hot topic, so it's relatively new. I've seen it in various districts around the country, though, so it is becoming more widely accepted. Having said that, some cons. District share may need to the use on previous 3 options. We're not going to be able to pick up OFCC with this, so our funding stream or that help from the state is gone. These things, as we have navigated this, and my office has spent a lot of time with some folks that have done these in other parts of the country. Here in Ohio, they are legally complicated, very complex. The latest challenge that we went into, if we were to design a facility with a P3, the Board of Education has to have language that at any point in time, they can literally take back that portion of the building that's the private share for educational use tomorrow. When you say they, I say the Board of Education, let me clarify that. So if we developed with ABC Company and they put in a private entity to help fund this, the board has to have language in the contract that says, sorry, ABC Company, we now need to utilize this facility next month for education, you're out. That's not very developer friendly, so there are some changes that we have to navigate that aren't as simple as just legal agreements. They would require changes to ORC, for example. Again, this is a new concept, very legally complex, but that was an obstacle that we ran into. I'm not saying it can't be overcome, because again, I think it is innovative, I think it's exciting, and I think it unlocks a tremendous amount of value. But it's going to take a little bit more work to be able to fully develop this. Sure.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, can you name a couple of districts around the country that are doing this that we could kind of look to see what that, to get a better picture of what that looks like?
Yeah, so California's been pretty active in this space. I believe LA Unified has done this. Prince George County. I've actually met with the architectural firms that were engaged and worked on this. They are actually very excited with this possibility, but we've run into some hurdles. I would recommend, I would go out and just throw in a Google search, because again, I think there is a bit of a proliferation of this across the country because it is innovative, it's beneficial to communities. There's a tremendous need out there for affordable housing. That's not unique to just Columbus. Again, I think we're gonna have to work with the state to get some of these hurdles cleared so that we can do this. I feel comfortable saying the Board of Education recognizes that need for affordable housing. We've had discussions on that. It's a key priority. So now the challenge becomes, how can we execute on this? Sure.
An example, though it's not a public school, is what LeBron James is doing in Akron.
Yeah.
Where so you don't even have to go that far. So he He's done that where he buys a building, there's classrooms, and he converts some of those classrooms to, I think it's single-family households, apartments. So he's done some of that. Something that we maybe that, as we're looking at the research, back in 09, 10, 11, 12, actually probably before that, I joined the board in 09, we had, as you look at complications, so we used to rent or allow nonprofits and other organizations to share space within our closed buildings for a very low cost, technically $1. But what usually happens, just so that we can look at that, when you talk about complications, people will invest in improvements in a building or at wall, so they make a huge investment. And then when a school district comes back and says, when we did this, we were at 20,000 students, and now we are at 100,000 students, that's when sometimes you get into complications, because you've made an investment, they've built a brand, there are certain things that have occurred that we've experienced here in the district. So as you were looking at the research, I would suggest that we look at some of our past experience. It's not necessarily this way. An example of what we've also done I was whispering to Chair Adair is on the Fort Hays campus, on one of the corners, we have a Head Start building. That is not Columbus City Schools, is a partner. So I just want to put out that this is, though it's new, it's not to Columbus City
Good to know.
Schools. We're actually doing it, except people don't see it in this concept. So if you want to research what that's doing, and we did have a conversation many years ago about whether so that happened because we did not have Head Start, and we had very limited early childhood, kindergarten, pre-K in Columbus City Schools. So a idea at the time to bring in that resource for our families was partner with an agency, provide space where we're at, and that's how that happened. Shortly thereafter, we did get some funding, and that was one of our priorities, to increase pre-K classrooms within Columbus City Schools, so that's expanded. So I say some of these things as we look at all these options. There are iterations that this district has done in order to try some things out. So we don't necessarily have to go as far to look at some of this research. As this committee looks at, and I think you asked it, Ms. Burrell, was that, when you're building one building, that means you can't build somebody else, right? So if there's a decision as a board to say, we're going to invest in West Broad Street, that means Cause, who's been on the we want a new building block for the last 12 years, and I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, will say, why West Broad and not Cause?
Correct.
Right? And Centennial and some of these other buildings, when we talk about facility master plans, we just said 54% of the district has not been built out. So when you're looking at all these, as we consider that, it's a bigger picture. Because a pro and a con that's not up there is option 5 would be if the pro is that West Broad would be built out. The con is other buildings would not.
That's correct.
So I would encourage us to add that somewhere,
that's a good
somehow,
thing to know, yeah, I like
Treasurer,
that.
because I think the community at West Broad would be very excited. Our other 25 buildings that have not been built out are going to ask questions.
I agree, and I think that's why I wanted to couch it initially. It's very much a board decision, but these 4 options are very much applicable to that 54%. I don't want to say I'm committed one way or the other. These are the options that we have as a district to fund facilities in general, so absolutely, absolutely.
And Treasurer, does this also apply to looking at administrative build-outs, such as, this committee and the board has already acted on this actual parcel we're on right now?
Sure.
Are these the same 4 options for that sort of project as well?
Yes, we could certainly use those, yes.
Other questions?
Just one more.
Sure.
So the district would have to cover our portion under option 4, would that come out of the PI budget?
We could utilize PI for that, certainly, yes. Yep. Much to come, exciting things to talk about, options available. I think that's the key thing. We have options.
I'm not sure if this is discussed, but
Sure.
obviously,
That's okay.
but why West Broad?
Let me take that.
Thank you.
So West Broad is the title of this one because it came out of the Facility Task Force recommendations that was voted on and approved by the board. We are, moving forward, closing. Other schools superintendent is making reports on it. At this point, West Broad is back in the hands of the board because it is contingent on funding. And so, because of that vote, we need to have dialogue about it. And then, to Ramona's point, is it the right order? Is it the right thing? Is it the right time? Looking at a more holistic facility plan. But we need to start the understanding and dialogue about that piece that the board committed to around understanding how do we even fund it, especially in light of all that is happening with our budget. So that's why it's titled West Broad, but as the treasurer said, really this is a broader discussion and understanding, because what we know is that, we are realigning, that is a fact, and that does mean that through realignment and what we need to ensure that we're meeting our student outcomes, we will have to also build. Because we need to create larger spaces, especially at the high school level. And so that discussion and understanding how we fund that, we have to start it. And so that's why West Broad is the title of this, and that's also why we have to talk about it, because it is in the board's court right now about that particular recommendation that the board did approve. Does that make sense?
So I have a thought, so I'll just think out loud. So we were talking about being proactive. I also think that, and we talk about this often internally, how do we balance the short term versus the long term? Right, because we recognize we probably have to do some remaster planning, right? That's in place. That's probably a multi-year, single-year, multi-year endeavor. But is there something in the short term that we can do, I like to say pilot, so that we can get some learnings? So as we're having these conversations, I don't know if there's an opportunity to maybe consider piloting one of these options as we're developing the long-term plan and kind of know how to do it better when other opportunities arise. So it's just finding that right balance.
If I could provide some additional context, I think one of the things we have to be very cautious about is, so in the absence of taking some kind of action, we're going to invest on the permanent improvement side on every one of our facilities. Every facility, even the newest one, has needs. Those needs tend to follow the age of the buildings. It's not a perfect mapping, but it's pretty close. So if I'm comfortable recommending bringing buildings like Scottwood and Hamilton STEM and Devonshire and Mifflin High School, these are buildings that are roughly 60 years old, through what we're calling our life cycle renewal plan, where we're doing these kind of quick refreshes over the summer. As our buildings start to approach 100 years old, they are beyond what we can do in one summer. We're having active discussions right now about buildings where we're struggling with plumbing. So these are the sewage systems that run under the floors. They're buried in the walls. Like, we don't have time over a summer break to open up walls and be replacing these kinds of systems. So that's when we talk about a portfolio of buildings of our size and all the tools we have at hand, there's ongoing maintenance. Our maintenance team does a nice job of doing that work. We now have stood up life cycle renewals, and we'll renovate spaces every single summer. But without standing up this facility master plan work, the new construction side, we will make tremendous investments to try to keep these buildings open and working for our students as best we can, but they're not great investments.
Low ROI.
Right, very low ROIs in terms of what we actually see out of those investments.
And I know that this is applicable to lots of different things, but just, do you know offhand about how old the West Broad building is?
It's one of our oldest.
I don't know the exact year, but I believe it's a 1920s structure. And
So around 100 years.
correct, yeah, I know. Yep, and I believe there's 10 to 12 facilities in that.
Correct.
In that timeframe, so it is a struggle to keep those buildings operating well for our staffs, our teams.
And I think if I can highlight that, we talked about how these options cause us to eat up some of that PI ability, that bandwidth, and that's exactly what Alex is talking about, because we're committing those resources to life cycle renewals. And it's important we have a plan and we look at this in the long run, because we've only got so many dollars coming in from a PI perspective. Thank you.
Right, this more conversation. So committee members, as you heard things, if you want more information or different dialogue, like let me know, because we have to continue to talk about this as a committee, talk about it with our community, because it's complicated and it involves both short and long term. It's looking at asset management, it's looking at how we're using our limited resources and ensuring that we are giving our students the environment that they need to be able to learn. And so if there's questions or you need deeper dives or more information, tell me and we will make that happen, so that we can continue this dialogue. There's no action on this one today. This was just a start to a conversation, and we will definitely be talking about this more.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one additional thing I would kind of throw into the mix. Like, so we have just taken a very high-level look at this particular site in a couple different respects. We're particularly excited about this site because it is on the first of CODA's bus rapid transit corridors. What exactly that means for us as a system, we're still kind of scratching our head too, but there is certainly something that we should be thinking about. So we're certainly going to wait to get some sort of direction in terms of diving too deep into what a scenario would look like that we could actually cost out with a lot of detail, but it's certainly one that we have talked about internally a lot.
I know we hit you with a lot on finance tonight. Thank you. I appreciate the questions. Good questions.
Yeah, perfect. All right, and we are going to close out with learning more about our latchkey and getting an update on some financial needs that they are experiencing. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Baker to lead us in this dialogue.
Good evening. Thank you for having me today to share an update about Latchkey. So I want to start with, I would like to start just talking about how Latchkey aligns to our board goals and guardrails. As always, everything under my umbrella, I like to make sure that I'm in alignment with the board's intentions. And so we have our 3 board goals. Particularly, I want to focus on strengthening the reading proficiency and math proficiency and how those things are included in Latchkey, as well as focusing on the prioritization of the whole child and aligning our resources equitably. So when we look at how we align to the board goals and guardrails. So our Latchkey program, the staff are required to do lesson plans. And in those lesson plans, they include art, language arts, math, science, social studies, and dramatic play, as well as social emotional learning. In addition, they have homework assistance, and then they provide resources and supports to families. And so they're focused on the whole child in Latchkey. Next, I'm going to cover our program data. So we currently, Latchkey is self-sustaining. I'm not sure how many people are aware of that. So that basically means that the tuition produces the revenue for the sites. That is how it is funded. We currently have 18 sites. We have 19 teachers. One of our sites is large enough to require 2 teachers. And then we have 18 instructional assistants. As of April, our enrollment, we had 646 students enrolled. 392 of the students attend both morning and afternoon Latchkey, 69 attend morning only, and 186 attend afternoon only. All of our sites are highly rated. They're all gold star rated in terms of step up to quality. this is just an explanation of Step Up to Quality. It is how childcare programs are rated in the state, and so we have the highest rating.
Dr. Baker, before you move to the finance slide,
Yes.
can you just highlight a little bit about the age group that Latchkey covers? And you mentioned that there are, like lesson plans. Maybe a little bit more about the actual programming might be a little bit of a helpful level set.
Sure. Currently, Latchkey is available for kindergarten through sixth grade students, and they have the option of before and after school. So all of our Latchkey teachers have at least a bachelor's degree and some type of license from the state. So either they have a substitute license, or they may even, some of them have a teacher's license. And in addition, our instructional assistants all have a paraprofessional license, again, from the state. In order for us to be gold rated, they need to have those credentials. In addition, there are additional requirements in terms of like the lesson planning, the differentiation, activity choice that is required at each site, as well as the sites being licensed for operation by JFS as well.
And I know that on board docs, that hyperlink is active and you can see where the sites are.
Yes.
Can you just really quickly talk about what if a latchkey is not in your child's school? How do they still have access to it and how do they get there?
Yes, so if latchkey isn't available, then transportation will transport them to the closest school where there is latchkey services.
Are there any program questions before we jump into the finances, just so we understand what latchkey is? Yeah. No? Okay. You have a finance question, okay. All right. Thank you for that. I just wanted to make sure we had a good level set about what it was and who was being served.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, Board Member Ingles has a question.
Also, I
Yes.
believe that you said we had the highest rating for Step Up to Quality.
Yes, which is gold.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations on that. You said it very quietly, and that's amazing.
Thank you.
And then on a positive note as well, then, before we get into finance, since we're going to ask questions about that, it's really great to see that we're seeing increases in math and reading proficiency. I'm super curious, is that directly related because of the latchkey and providing kids earlier opportunities?
I think that it's supported. So students are able to bring their homework or different, whatever they have experienced during the school day, since they go to latchkey like first thing in the morning before they go to class or at the end of the day, then they're able to get that extra support.
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
Do we track, like, for latchkey kids specifically, do we track, like, math proficiency and?
I have not
That's
tracked
kind
that.
of
That's a good question. I have not, but I have tracked the discipline, and they do have less discipline than students who don't attend latchkey, so I can say that. But I have not tracked the academic piece, but that is something that I can look into.
That's good, yeah, that's good. We were on the same vibe.
Yeah, because I think when we talk about, showing community success and everything, if we can prove the success like you're talking about, then it's easy to talk to people about, like, we need more of this, right? And so, yeah, I think tracking, that's a great way to help tell people what's working.
Both of my daughters attended Latchkey. They're 5 years apart, and it just improved from my first daughter when she was going there for kindergarten, when my second daughter got there 5 years later for kindergarten. It was just improvements. So it's a great
Testimony.
I can testify to that, too.
I'm gonna say, I would.
Yeah, and it's not just after-school care, like it is, but it's not. There's academic elements, there is assignments they do, there's also parent engagement. And so, the staff, they do a really excellent job with it. And so I know it's essential for the families that are using this service.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and move now into the finance.
So our current tuition for latchkey is $65 for morning care, $70 for afternoon, and $85 for both morning and afternoon care.
Is that weekly?
Can you say that louder, sorry?
Weekly. I was clarifying, yeah.
So I don't want to look at, this is our current projection without a tuition increase. So as you can see, we would look to be going into the red next school year if we do not have our tuition increase, and then that debt would be compounded. And again, I just want to reiterate, we are self-sustaining. So currently, the tuition is what funds the entire program. So we are not reliant on general fund or any other funding source.
Can you explain really quickly, in that tuition, that there are, we take the title money, there's ways for parents to pay this?
Yeah, so we accept PFCC for latchkey. So parents who qualify for PFCC can utilize that for our latchkey based on, on qualifying for,
Right.
on income.
Right, so,
I was wanting to ask,
Yeah.
income based, on a sliding scale.
Yes.
No, yes.
It's on the-
which is set by the state and the county, that isn't our choice, but
Right,
it's
right, right.
qualifying for the family.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. So we're requesting a tuition increase. So the proposed amount is a $5 increase for each level. So $5 increase for the morning care, the aftercare, and then the morning care. And so that would bring those to $70, $75, and $90 respectively. If you can look at this particular slide, it'll show that, so I showed you the first part. If we did not have the tuition request, that's what that first chart is. And then the second section with the pink is showing what the cash balance would be with the $5 increase. So that would keep us in the positive.
Dr. Baker?
Yes.
So is this supposing a one-time $5 per week increase or a $5 per year increase?
This is an every other year increase. So we're requesting an every other year increase. The last time we had it was in fiscal year 23, and that was for 23, 24. That was for 24. So then 25, this year we didn't have an increase, and we're asking for one for next year.
So I think along those lines, it's the classic, I think what was presented earlier about all expenses going up, right? Is it mostly salaries that's causing that, or is it also materials and other things that are causing it?
It's primarily salaries,
Okay.
but we do have some materials that we are purchased. And so that's kind of what, if you look at the next slide, in terms of the sustainability, you can see without the increase, again, next year we start to go into the negative, but with the increase, we're able to maintain through 29. And then sustainability over time. Again, you can look at the cash balance with the increase in red versus the cash balance without the increase in blue.
No question. Going back to what Martin just said about that, part of the increase in the tuition is to cover salary increases. Does the cash balance without increase factor in the cost of teacher attrition and needing to hire new people in the very likely event that they would leave if they were not able to get an increase? Is that considered as part of these projections?
No.
Okay. Well, I think that when people hear, oh, this is just salary, people want more money, of course they do, and with everything that is happening within our economy, people need more money for a living wage. But I think sometimes people kind of look at that like, oh, people just want more money, and I don't always think that people understand that it costs money to hire new people and to, recruit, train, and get qualified people in the classroom. And qualified people in the classroom come at a certain price, so.
Absolutely.
Maybe can you explain a little bit, and maybe the treasurer can help with this? Because you started off by saying this is a self-sustaining program.
Yes.
The people that work in the program
Yes.
are employees of the district.
Yes.
And so maybe we can kind of, in light of what was just asked, kind of explain that in terms of how, when we talk about school district employees and we talk about increases, how that comes about and why maybe that question is a little bit differently answered, if you know where
Could
I'm
you
going.
repeat the question for me?
I just asked if the projections about the cash balance without an increase factor in the cost of recruiting, hiring, training new people to account for attrition.
So I'll stick with her answer of no on that, but in answering Board Member Adair's question, we often have to work with our labor partners on contractual negotiated agreements, and those cost increases are built into salary schedules and scales, if you will. So there is a constant increase, to your point. There's just a cost for professionals to educate our students, and that pressure is always upward in most cases. To your point, I think it is important to note that we can't just say, oh, well, they'll go. There is a tremendous cost that is oftentimes hidden to when you lose staff, that institutional knowledge and that experience. And it's oftentimes far greater than those increases because there's training cost, knowing your students' cost, knowing how the district policies, procedures, et cetera. And it takes time to learn that.
Right.
I know that as a new employee myself. So we don't often account for that in it, but it is a very real cost that we face, one that we talk about in my office all the time. So again, I think we have contractual increases due to our labor agreements, and those factor into then this expense side of the equation on these self-sustaining programs, which means Dr. Baker and her team are not asking the general fund or a grant program for funding for this program. It is solely based on the revenue that they receive, and so they additionally need relief for those rising costs.
Thank you.
So I have not a question, but to add to it, so it is part of the union, right?
Correct.
Teachers are.
The teachers as well as our instructional
Correct.
assistants, they're
Even the
part of
paras,
it.
yeah, okay, got you.
Did that help? Okay.
So I do want to note that a few years ago, when I came before, at the time, it was the Finance and Appropriations Committee, I think, and so for this increase, I did research around what the costs were with the other urban aid costs for care, and at that time, even a few years ago, we were really behind, and even if you know that we do the $5 increase, we're still well within the range of what other districts were charging 2 years ago.
So these are the figures from 2 years ago, not their current figures.
Correct. And I would only imagine that they too have increased.
Right.
Have you done any research or looked at just other providers in our city to know what they're charging? And then if so, the comparable between our staff qualifications and their staff qualifications?
Yes, and so that came up, and yeah, it's all over the place, as you can imagine. There is no systematic way or set way for different private entities who charge. but what I can say, and have been noted previously, is that all of our staff are licensed by the state, and all of our teachers have a minimum of a bachelor's. I doubt that that is the case in many other childcare providers. What else is a perk for is that the transportation, because that's another issue. There's a lot of other providers may not have a daycare van or means to transport the student to and from the school site, whereas we do provide that.
And also, I might add, we have professional development, right, correct?
Yes, we do. All of our staff.
Required.
Yes, they participate in the professional development on our professional development days.
Do you know the percentage of our families that are receiving assistance?
I do not know that, but I can find that out.
So kind of thinking about the cost increase, kind of the other way, right, on our families. If someone received, money from the state for assistance for childcare, either fully or partially, because it depends on their, do we feel like this cost increase would prohibit some of our families from being able to afford our services?
I don't think so, and it was actually shocking, and I'll get the actual percentage, but less of our families actually, than you would imagine, are utilizing the PFCC for latchkey.
Chair, I have a question. And excuse me, Doctor, I'm not sure for how long you've been with the district, but the last time that this increase was implemented, did that affect attendance numbers at all?
It didn't. We have been staying pretty consistent around like the mid-600s in terms of enrollment, and the projections were based on 630 students if we maintained that. So we've been maintaining that for since the last increase.
Yeah, I think for me as a committee member, I think we've all brought up the fact that $5 is $5, but it's $5 everywhere.
Yeah.
So it seems reasonable, but it's like, what's the straw that breaks the camel's back for the families? And so I think that I don't know if we're taking action on this. I think obviously for me, the fiscal need for increased revenue has been made clear, but just any additional information in the future that could reassure both parents and this committee that this increase doesn't risk access for specific children over others, I think we all understand kind of what I'm trying to get at here. Sorry, long day.
Oh, great point.
Well, yeah, and I think to add on to that, I was doing some math, some very rough math. I'm not going to say the numbers in case I get it wrong. But, I think to that point, one thing I was thinking is I've seen some schools do fundraisers, right? Where their PTOs put on really great festivals and are able to do fundraisers. And I'm curious if there's an opportunity here as well, so that for any families where this would limit the access, we have a pot of money that they can use instead of having to pay for it directly.
Yeah, I think, so part of it is, we obviously know this is a need for families. We support it through having professionals there, but we also understand that this is a outside service, right? So it is the family that contributes, and that's why this is part of a self-sustaining model and not part of a general fund. So I think kind of, if the school or community wanted to support it in a different way, I think that's a very fair question. I don't know if necessarily having school-based fundraisers would be the right way for this because of our model. Now, we could talk about a different model, but as is right now, that would require kind of a different thought process and probably more access, which we would need more staff for. So, and again, I think as we talk about, and this is really the academic facility alignment committee, but the alignment of all of our facilities through programming, we do know that this pre-K space and this little kid space, which includes help for families, is critical. And so the way we talk about it and build around it as a community, even through realignment and creating spaces where there's more kind of community type campuses where maybe everybody's just kind of there and it's seamless. We're working with Parks and Rec differently, we're working with people differently, where it's seamless, right? And we can do more, we have to have that kind of dialogue, for future planning. Do you want to talk about the communication plan?
Oh, sure. All right, so, I know last time that was a concern, how will families know? So we have already started enrollment for, next school year, and what we've done is we've just noted that pending board approval, there could be, a $5 increase to the tuition, just so that we can make sure that families are not blindsided by that when they do enroll. The information, obviously, we would send out communication to the families, and the fees will be posted on our website. So we have that's the beauty of Latchkey, is that we have that direct access to families because they are dropping off and picking up. So the communication between our Latchkey staff and our families is strong.
Through that little notice, have you gotten any questions or comments from families?
We have not, and actually some sites already have a waiting list.
Wow.
And they opened on the 12th.
For this program, are you seeing more success, or I don't want to say success, but enrollment in some of the schools that tend to have more students from the neighborhood versus more schools where students come from all over different parts of the city? How does that breakdown in enrollment play out in the students that actually attend the Latchkey program?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me see. I'm gonna go back to, I'm gonna put my site so I can talk about that. So when most of the sites with the higher enrollment, I think the higher school enrollment also are having the higher Latchkey enrollment, is what we're seeing. So like Alpine, Spanish Immersion, Clinton, those schools are having the higher enrollment.
And so when you say that, you mean like the more of the students come from the neighborhood and are not necessarily like lottering in or coming from far parts of the city to attend the local school?
Correct, yes.
Spanish immersion is lottery.
Spanish Immersion
lottery.
is lottery, but Clinton is not. Alpine, Avalon, those are like larger, Indian Springs, those are larger sites.
I guess, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I guess I'm just asking from a facilities plan for the future, if Latchkey is an important part. And so I was just curious how that might play into any decision that we make in the future as far as, are our students are our families able to take more advantage of these types of programs if they're more likely attending their local neighborhood school, or are we seeing attendance in these kinds of programs even when the child comes from maybe a farther part of the city than?
No, I could look into that. So I don't know that, but I do know that we are not utilizing, this should make Mr. Wood, we are not utilizing a lot of transportation where their families are finding aid. So for whatever reason, most students are going to the school they attend, whether or not they've lotteried into the school or they live in that neighborhood, they are attending that school. I'm not sure if that helps.
And then how do we decide where the sites are? Because like, for example, we brought up Columbus Spanish Immersion. That's right down the road from Mays, which is right around the corner from Oakland Park. So that area seems very saturated. And you just said most of the kids that go to the school, they're in their Latchkey.
Yes.
And so how do we decide where the sites are at our schools?
So a lot of these sites were already established before I came into this position, but unfortunately, it's similar to pre-K as well in terms of who has space and,
Sorry, that's probably more of an academic facility committee question.
No, I mean, but it's because they utilize like the gym or those community spaces. And so it's who has that and then who doesn't have another program or utilizing the space for something else.
The way doesn't take.
Yeah.
So did you want us to make a recommendation? I wasn't actually clear on that. You're shaking your head, yes. Okay. So they are requesting that the committee make a recommendation to the board regarding you want to do just the one $5 for 2 years? Or are you asking for more than that?
So we need to continue the $5 increase throughout, until 2029, actually. And then at that point, the $5 increase will not even be enough.
Okay.
So,
Is it $5 every year is a $5 increase?
Every 2 years.
Every other
Every 2
year.
years, okay.
It's okay. I just want to make sure we're clear about what the recommendation is. So you were recommending a $5 increase to weekly tuition
yes,
of $5 for fiscal year, or end of school year
fiscal year 26.
26 and 28.
Yes,
26 and 28.
yes.
Okay, does
And then I'll
everyone
be back in
understand?
28
Said ask for $10.
To ask for 10, 7.
We're getting feedback.
Yeah, there's a lot of feedback, guys.
Sometimes if you put your phones too close to the microphones, that causes.
Oh, who was it?
Just an FYI.
Okay.
Yeah, if you put it too close.
All right, so,
causes-
a motion to recommend an increase of $5 for the weekly charge for latchkey for fiscal year 26 with an additional $5 increase in fiscal year 28. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion?
Just briefly, if once it gets to the full board meeting, I don't know if it's been considered, rather than going to a $10 increase in 29, to maybe make this an annual $5. Just what would the difference be on the family compared, like if I know that we're gonna come back and ask for $10, what would those two models look like?
I don't think
compared
it's
to each other?
10.
No, I guess what I'm saying is that the $5
After
increases
29,
won't be enough.
even the 5 won't be enough. So
Okay, we'll have to have a whole new discussion about it.
Yeah, I was just, that's my last piece, is just maybe it would be helpful to consider an annual $5 rather than $5 every other year, if down the line, it's gonna need to be more than 5 anyways.
So I can work with Brian's team and we can mock up like what that would look like.
We can
Well,
model
then
that.
do we not feel comfortable, maybe then we just do because you kind of need to know now for next year, if we just recommend it for fiscal year 26 and then work on that to come back. It could even come back in a
didn't mean to
month.
ruin
I would say we have the motion on the table. Let's go ahead and vote on the motion on the table. We can always make a second
Right.
motion if that is needed. But also, the recommendation of this committee will come with the caveat that there is discussion about alternative models. So when it comes before the board can have that full discussion.
That's what I
And
intend.
by then, we might have some models to look at.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, so the motion was as I stated. 5 and 26, 5 and 28. All right, please call the roll.
Sadare,
Yes.
Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Ms. Ingles,
Yes.
Ms. Reyes,
Yes.
Ms. Majia,
Yes.
Ms. Price,
Yes.
Ms. Burrell,
Yes.
Ms. Upchurch.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, thank you. So we will make that recommendation to the board with more dialogue and decision by the board. All right.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, everyone, for such an amazing discussion tonight on a variety of very important topics to the district, some of which we will continue to have. And again, if there are topics or themes that you personally have questions about, let me know, because we can build that into future dialogue. We will be creating a new Remember, I gave you guys the calendar at the beginning of the school year. I'm going to be working on that to build it out again for the next school year to kind of target when we could have different discussion and dialogue and talking point or recommendations that go to the board. So we'll be working on that kind of as we finish up this school year. All right, so all we need now is a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.
Motion in a second. Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Every night.